building in there? What the hell is he building in this?
It had taken Enron 16 years to go from about $10 billion of assets to $65 billion of assets. It took him 24 days to go bankrupt.
What the hell is he building in this?
This company collapsed so quickly and so entirely. I mean, it was into bankruptcy within a matter of weeks. It just immediately had all the makings of a gigantic scandal.
He's hiding something from the rest of us.
The fatal flaw at Enron, if there was one, you say, it was pride. But then it was arrogance, intolerance, greed.
So many of them were blinded by the money that they didn't see that they were sinking their own lifeboat.
You have a right to know.
It just got hungrier and hungrier. Sooner or later, they were doomed to go off that cliff at 90 miles an hour.
It's astounding that they got away with it for so long.
In reality, Enron was a house of cards.
What we didn't know is that the house of cards had been built over a pool of gasoline. It all sort of became smoke and mirrors.
Committee will come to order. This is a case of America's largest corporate bankruptcy. The question here is what happened, who was responsible for it happening, and what can we do to prevent this sort of thing from happening again?
I think the Enron story is so fascinating because people perceive it as a story that's about numbers, that it's somehow about all these complicated transactions. But in reality, it's a story about people, and it's really a human tragedy.
Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that got his own, Yes, the strong get more, while the weak ones stay. Empty pockets don't ever make the grave. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that got his own, Monday you got lots of friends crowding round the door. When you're gone and spending
On this date at 2:23 a.m., Sugar Land Police discovered John C. Baxter located inside his vehicle with an apparent gunshot wound to the head. At this time, there has been a suicide note located.
Can you give any indication whether this was related to Enron's bankruptcy?
We do know that he was an Enron employee, but as far as any other indications of why he committed suicide, no, we do not.
Mrs. Skilling, let me touch on something that's sort of sad, and that's, of course, the suicide of Cliff Baxter. And you mentioned he was your best friend in your opening statement. Before he died, did you have many conversations with him?
Yes.
And were any of them relative to Enron?
Yes. There's no one that knew Cliff toward the end that didn't realize that he was heartbroken by what had happened. And Cliff came over to my house, and he said, they're calling us child molesters. He says, that will never wash off.
But, Mr. Skilling, you don't believe that.
I don't believe what?
You don't believe that the press and everybody calling Cliff Baxter or yourself or anybody on the board of directors denigrating or tainting you, you don't think it's accurate, is what you're saying to us here today.
I do not believe I did not do anything wrong that was not in the interest, and all the time I worked for Enron Corporation, that was in the interest of the shareholders of the company.
Ultimately, who was responsible for the downfall of Enron? Only a few years ago, Enron was the nation's 7th largest corporation, valued at almost $70 billion. Pundits praised the company as a new business model. This trading floor was manned by America's best and brightest, charting the futures of energy and power. And high above each with a private staircase, Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling had built their own plush staterooms. They were known as the smartest guys in the room, captains of a ship too powerful to ever go down.
In the Titanic, the captain went down with the ship. In Enron, it looks to me like the captain first gave himself and some friends a bonus, then lowered himself and the top folks down in the lifeboat, and then hollered up and said, by the way, everything's going to be just fine.
Like Skilling, Ken Lay said he hadn't done anything wrong.
Really not this morning. Thank you.
Beyond the financial issues, some suspected a political conspiracy. Enron had been the largest corporate contributor to the first presidential campaign of George W. Bush.
This is not a political issue. It is a business issue. You know, Enron had made contributions to a lot of people around Washington, D.C. And if they came to this administration looking for help, they didn't find any.
To say no help here is like I did not have political relations with that man, Mr. Lay.
What about the fact that George W. Bush called Ken Lay Kenny Boy?
That's my nickname for my husband, which he overheard. So it wasn't original with the president. Certainly wasn't.
According to published reports, your husband earned about $300 million in compensation and stocks from Enron over the last 4 years. What happened to all that money?
It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing left.
Will. This is the shredded evidence we got that came out of Enron.
We very quickly determined that the insiders had sold off $1 billion of their stock in the preceding several months.
Did you convert stock worth $66 million?
I don't know, but I don't.
Would that be surprising to you to learn that you did that?
No, that would not be surprising.
Mr. Fasto got only $30 million in stock proceeds from Enron, but he took another $30 million out with his side deals.
I think there was just an immediate sense of outrage at Lay and Skilling and Fastow when people realized how much they had profited and how completely artificial the appearance of this company had been.
News of shredding at Enron raised more questions. What answers were lost in the torn documents? 20,000 employees had lost their jobs. $2 billion in pensions and retirement funds had disappeared. Was Enron the work of a few bad men or the dark shadow of the American dream?
Lay comes to the story of Enron from very humble roots.
My father was a Baptist minister, and he was ordained a Baptist minister while I was very young, probably 2 or 3 years old.
Ken Lay was a Baptist preacher's son in a family that had been poor all its life. And he, throughout his life, worked several jobs as a kid, and clearly had in mind that things could be better and wanted things to be better, and had a huge ambition to make wealth for himself. He told a story later about sitting on a tractor dreaming about the world of business and how different it could be from the way things were for him and his family. Lay was a PhD in economics, and he became very early on a real apostle for deregulation. He was way ahead of the curve on this. He was thinking about energy markets that would be deregulated, and in particular, a natural gas industry that was shackled by regulation. And he pushed aggressively in Washington to change all of that.
In Washington, Lay became part of a new crusade to liberate businessmen from the